What's up, everybody? I'm Taylor, and here I share my personal recovery journey. I just want to start off saying I am grateful for all my subscribers, all the comments, and all the support. It's people like y'all of why I keep having the courage to post these videos. It was on my heart to share my journey about overcoming my social media addiction, and it's actually pretty funny. So I really didn't start social media until about 3 years ago when I got into recovery. Before that, I was never really the type of person that liked to be on my phone. I was addicted to the television, and I would like binge on Netflix, and I would imagine myself in the TV show to escape from my reality because I was suffering so much. So when I got sober in 2020, I threw myself into college as a coping mechanism. When that burnt me out, I became severely depressed, and that's when I started sleeping like all day, every day, binging on Netflix, eating junk food. Like, I was just completely depressed, and I was in a lot of pain, emotionally and physically, honestly. And so when I got into recovery, that's when I really started realizing there was YouTube shorts and stuff, and I had known about YouTube. I had done some research and stuff on YouTube, like researching things, and but I never knew there were shorts. And so I found out there were shorts, and what I ended up doing about 3 years ago when I came into recovery is that I noticed, for me, when I first got on social media, like everything that was popping up on my feed was like political, things about like drama, outside issues, like things that I did not want to pop up on my feed, like things that I feel bring a negative reaction out of me, and I don't want to feel icky like that. So things that were polluting my brain, basically. And so I realized and I figured out that I could hit, when videos would pop up, I could hit do not recommend. And there's also an option you can hit, and it will ask you like, why are you hitting this option? And I would always put misleading. Now, this took months and months of me doing this, okay, to build my feed up to where it's like self-development, spirituality, like animal videos. I love animals, like nature stuff, like things about addiction and counseling. Like, I built my feed to shorts that were gonna contribute to my growth, not pollute my brain, okay? And although that sounds positive, right, I'm filling my brain with things that are helping me grow, and yes, it was benefiting me at the time because that's what I needed that moment in my recovery, for the things that were being talked about in these videos to leave an imprint and for my brain to absorb this new way of life, right? So it's like, that was a way that I was able to trick my brain into a new way of living, by constantly putting the information into my brain. Repetition. I talk about in all my videos, repetition and action. And so I started realizing that, well, I can use YouTube shorts as a coping mechanism when I get angry, or I'm feeling unseen, unheard, or I'm feeling lonely, or whatever, feeling any uncomfortable emotion. I realized I can just start scrolling, and that can be my new coping mechanism. So basically that became my new coping mechanism. So I went from being in addiction to stopping addiction, being in college as a coping mechanism, then college burnt out, and then sleep became my coping mechanism. So then it became YouTube shorts. Now, this is the thing. Change has many different layers. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna do this and then I'm gonna be changed. These things happen like progressively, right, and slowly. And so this was the beginning of getting me to where I am now. And so I had to accept myself where I was in my recovery. And I noticed, like, anytime, like with my spouse, for example, if I was feeling rejected, I would just keep my mouth shut, and I would go outside or go somewhere, and I would just start scrolling. And that really taught me how to pause, okay? And eventually I started to realize, when I started meditation, that I was using the phone as a coping mechanism to escape my emotions, because I wasn't actually allowing myself to sit with those emotions. although the videos that I were watching were contributing to my growth, I like to call it healthy procrastination, because the things that I was watching was helping me grow. And I started meditation, and it was really hard to start meditation. It's not like I just came outside one night and I sat there and I meditated. No, this was a very long process for me. It started slowly. Like, I started setting a timer on my phone and my alarm clock to go off at the same time every night. And I'm really like the nighttime, so I make sure that I have came outside no matter what. And all it started with was just coming out here and sitting in silence and just looking up at the sky and just being mindful of my surroundings. That's how it started, like little by little, gradually by gradually, right? And then eventually, through time, through repetition, I started getting more comfortable with that. And then so I kept going with it. And then I got to a point where I wasn't afraid to close my eyes and meditate. You know, when I first started meditation, I could not close my eyes and meditate. And so that's what I mean when I say it was a process for me. Okay, it didn't happen overnight. And this is my point of creating this video and sharing my personal experience, because I know a lot of people suffer with this. And you know, for me, I'm in a place in my recovery today, and I got to a place in my recovery a while ago because I started meditating. That's my point. Because I started making a meditation a priority, a habit, and it became a part of my natural programming, I started realizing that I wasn't reaching for my phone as much to cope with painful emotions, okay? And so, I had a really painful experience happen a few days ago, and I had a loss of a baby bird, and it was my own doing. It was accidental. I forgot to close the toilet lid, and I didn't know it had built up its strength, and it had hopped in there and it had drowned while I was in my counseling appointment, and I found it like that. And so I went to the bathroom excited to see my bird, and then I found it in the toilet. And there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score, okay? And I've read this book a little bit, but not thoroughly through. And in that moment, when I found my bird, I didn't realize that a person could feel the pain that I had felt, because I had always smoked weed every day my entire life. So like the painful losses I've had in the past, except a few, I was always loaded. So I never really experienced that intense of a reaction my entire life. And in that moment, every person I had ever lost, including my child, just played through my head like a movie. Like it was like da 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 da, like flashing, right? Like flashes. And the pain was so unbearable, I dropped to my knees. Like it was that intense, okay? And like I was screaming. And then I realized I need to get my shit together. So I self-soothed like within a few minutes, and I got my shit together. And I was devastated, right? Like I had a lot of guilt and I had a lot of shame, okay? And naturally, in the past, I would call somebody immediately, or I would distract myself with the podcast, or I would pick up my phone to look at shorts, because that used to be my coping mechanism. But I instantly was able to walk outside, and I was able to sit, and I was able to allow myself to feel the pain and just let it be pain, okay? And before meditation, I would never be able to do something like this. And see, this is what I've realized, and this is my own personal experience, is that I'm gonna feel pain regardless. It doesn't matter if I'm drunk, whatever substance I'm using, like the pain is gonna be pain, right? And so what meditation has done for me, it's given me the ability to just sit with that pain. And I'm not just talking about the pain of my thoughts. I'm talking about like my chest on fire, like a bomb is exploding in my chest, and like my body's on fire in the inside. Like it's that intense. And I'm able to breathe through it. And I'm able to like cry without beating myself up and like just talking to myself like crap. Like I'm able to like comfort myself and support myself and be gentle with myself and show empathy, love, and compassion. Like it was an accident, right? Logically, I know that. but my brain can still be like, if you would have done this, if you would have done that, blah blah blah, those ifs and would haves, right? But the reality is that I didn't. And so because I'm because I'm deep in meditation and I have a daily recovery schedule that I complete no matter what, that almost for 2 years now I've created a schedule, and that is the main reason I'm able to have a successful recovery. That is the reason I'm able to maintain my emotional sobriety, and the reason I'm able to handle painful experiences and emotions as they arise. Consistency, right? It's like, until I would really build a solid foundation, I could not respond to pain in the way that I'm speaking about now. I couldn't. I was a very impulsive, explosive person my entire life, okay? And so these past few days, I've been processing a lot. And I have enough self-awareness now to realize there have been times I've wanted to reach for my phone. There's been times I've wanted to reach for a book, okay? And I have read my book, of course, but a higher percentage of the time, I've given myself permission to sit with the pain, okay? And that's the thing, is like, until a person has their own experience with meditation and what the benefits of meditation can do, they're not going to understand what I'm talking about. Because I would hear people in recovery meetings talk about meditation and their experience with it, but I just couldn't understand what they were saying, right? And so when I have those thoughts that want to say, you should have done this, I instantly talk to that thought and I'm like, but you didn't. The reality is, you forgot to shut the toilet lid. Cause and effect, right? The cause of me not shutting the toilet lid led to my bird dying. And that's the reality. And that is a painful truth to swallow. But today I can accept and I can take responsibility without guilting myself and beating myself up and like putting myself down. That's my point. And so because of recovery, and not just 12-step programs, I speak a lot about 12-step programs when I started this channel, because that was the only resource I had. I didn't realize there was so many different recovery programs. I just didn't realize it. And you know, the thing is that until I changed the way I started speaking to myself, because I always would tell myself things like, you can't do this, or you're not good enough to do this, you don't deserve this, like, those limited beliefs prevented me from really making change happen. And so in the beginning of recovery, it was like I was fighting a war within my head. You know, the analogy, I'm not a religious person by no means, but the analogy of the devil and the angel, right? Or I like to say the negative mind and the positive mind. And the only mind I fed my entire life was the negative mind. And the negative mind makes up the addiction, the suffering, the trauma, the dysfunction, the resentment, the guilt, the shame, the lack of emotion regulation, like all these things I don't want to be, right? All these things I don't want to feel, I call my negative mind. And then the positive mind is the love, the compassion, the patience, and all these things I do want to feel, I do want to be. And so the more I fed my positive mind, the more and more and more I fought against listening to my inner critic. The more I fought against listening to my negative mind when it would tell me not to do something. And I fed my positive mind, the easier it got, the more positive I started feeling, the more good I started feeling, the more worthy I started feeling, the more good enough I felt, right? So I had to put a lot of inner work in. It wasn't just go to a couple meetings, read a couple books. It's been almost 3 years. So this is through a 3-year period of building consistency, repetition, and action, and really overcoming that negative mind. And that is a very hard thing to do. And it's really hard, and I get it. I really do. And so my point of making this video is that, you know, until I could start believing in myself and telling myself I can, I will, and I have, and I am, things would not change. And so it doesn't matter what painful experience happens in my life today, because I have a consistency in a daily recovery schedule and meditation, and I have that solid foundation. and I maintain it no matter what, no matter how I feel physically, mentally, or emotionally. That is the only reason I'm able to face pain and not allow myself to get immersed in the pain. I've learned that I am really separate from my pain. My brain can internalize a threat, but really there is no threat, right? And so I've been able to become self-aware when my brain is trying to catastrophize or internalize or ruminate. I've been able to catch it, and I can say, wait a second, no, we're not going to go there today. Like talking back to my brain, showing my brain who's boss or whatever it is. I just say my brain because I don't know what the hell it is, right? But I know it's there. And so, you know, that's how I'm able to deal with pain today. And that's why I created this channel, you know, to share my lived experience, to let people know, like, it's possible to get sober. It's possible, even if you've never been in addiction, it's possible to overcome suffering, because suffering in itself is an addiction. It is. It's an endless cycle of reliving the pain over and over and over again. And what I've realized is that it doesn't matter how much I think of a painful experience and I should have done this, I could have done this, if I would have done this. The reality is the situation and the experience still happened. So me thinking about it, wanting it to be different than what it is the definition of insanity, okay? It can't be different because it's not different because it wasn't different. It happened the way it happened. And that's where surrendering to my emotions, right? And acceptance comes in. Accepting responsibility, accepting my part in things, and not internalizing it and really making it something that it doesn't have to be, you know? And so that's the way I'm able to deal with pain today. And that is the way that I have been able to overcome my addiction to social media, my addiction to substances, my addiction to wanting to relive my pain and ruminate in my pain. Even the addiction with talking to myself in a negative way, because that in itself is an addiction, because I did that my entire life. It was a natural part of my programming. So I had to break my old programming, my old conditioning by developing a new one. And that takes a lot of repetition and a lot of inner work. It doesn't just happen overnight. It has to happen with consistency and action. And so, you know, there's so many things about life I don't understand. And there's a lot of things, majority of things, probably about 98% of things that I'm not meant to understand, right? It doesn't matter how hard I think about something that I don't understand. Me thinking about it isn't going to make me understand, if that makes sense. And so rumination in itself is a coping mechanism. We think that if we think about this enough, then maybe we can think our way out of the pain. No, it doesn't. All it does is, at least for me, all it did was intensify the pain, because it didn't change the fact that the painful experience happened. And so meditation is the only reason I'm able to have self-discipline. I'm able to have patience. I'm able to pause. I'm able to think before I act, or think before I say something. And I'm not perfect by no means. I'm not. I still do things that I could have been like, oh, I could have said that differently, or I could have done that differently. The difference is I sit down and I self-reflect. I'm like, okay, how can I handle this next time? And that's the key in recovery. It's not about being perfect. It's not about doing things, you know, perfectly, right? It's about admitting when I could have said something or done something differently, and taking action next time to do it differently, right? And so that's how my recovery works, and that's what's really worked for me is meditation. I would not be where I'm at without meditation. It gave me such an open-minded awareness about life, about people, about myself, that honestly in the beginning was terrifying, because it's like I saw the world one way, and then I saw it another way, and now I see it in another way. And it's really given me the ability to grow closer to myself and to the power of life.